boy, were we lucky to have the leaders that we had that came before us. So both Bill Huber and I have talked long and hard about that topic. And I mean, to have Ray Orb exit, Jay Meyer exit when they did, we didn't just do that overnight. Jay and I had a transition that was almost, I don't even know, 8 months long, probably longer than that by the time I knew I was taking on this role. And then Bill, I mean, really, and Ray stepped up and they did a lot of things together as Bill looked to take over and Ray was exiting. So we had some really good advice. We had some really good leadership that led us to this spot.
Welcome to Municipal Affairs. Today we're talking about a milestone moment for rural Saskatchewan. Changes in the air at the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, better known as SARM, as a new leader takes the helm. Laurel Feltin officially stepped into the role of executive director in December, marking not just a transition in leadership, but a historic first. After 20 years of dedication to SARM and nearly a decade in leadership roles, Feltin isn't just taking on a new title, she's making history as the first woman to hold this position. For Feltin, this isn't just a job, though. It's a calling. She's passionate about rural Saskatchewan, about the communities that roll up their sleeves and get things done. And as she steps into this new role, she's committed to listening, learning, and above all, strengthening relationships with the people SARM represents. But what does this change mean for the future of rural Saskatchewan? How will her leadership shape SARM's direction? And as she prepares for her first annual convention as executive director, what's at the top of her agenda? Now, we will get into all of that and so much more as we sit down with Ms. Feltin, SARM's new executive director. So stay with us, as this is a conversation you will not want to miss. Across Canada, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities are alive with stories waiting to be told. Stories of innovation and economic development, resilience in the face of the housing challenges, and the financial hurdles municipalities overcome every day. At the Cross Border Network, we bring these stories to life. From coast to coast to coast, we're connecting Canadians to the issues shaping our communities and showcasing the people working tirelessly to make them thrive. With your support, we can expand our reach, amplify more voices, and shine a light on the challenges and triumphs of municipal life. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can help us grow and continue sharing the stories that matter most. Join us today and be part of this important mission. Together, we can tell more stories, build stronger communities, and make a real difference. Support the Cross Border Network now. Visit www.crossborderinterviews.ca today. Laurel, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about your new role with SARM and the direction that SARM is going to be going in under your new leadership. I guess I should start off by saying congratulations on becoming the new executive director of SARM. What does this change in leadership mean to you personally and professionally?
Thank you. And thanks for having me on the show, Chris. Great opportunity for me to share my pride. So anytime someone asks me, I say the first thing that comes to mind is I'm very proud to be in this role. So rural Saskatchewan has always felt like home to me. I love the people. The people, are the ones that get things done. They're the ones that volunteer. So for my 20 years, I've been at SARM for 20 years before I got this role as executive director. And for me, it's exactly where I wanted to be. My life just lined up perfectly. My kids are older. I have 2 teenagers. I have more time on my hands now, and I can really dedicate this next chapter in my life to basically even furthering things in rural Saskatchewan. It's a very successful place, but I believe that we at SARM can do more. And I also am very proud because I have 2 teenagers. I have one that's actually just starting to look, she's going to post-secondary and looking for a long-term career. I think it's wonderful for me to be able to step up and say, well, you know what, if you do things, if you just step up and do it, and if you put yourself out there, you too could be an executive director of an association someday. It's a pretty amazing story. So I'm happy to share it.
You just mentioned that you've been with the organization for about 20 years, and I can imagine you've seen the highs and the lows that comes with rural Saskatchewan municipalities, and the challenges that they are facing today are probably some that you were dealing with 20 years ago when you started with the organization. What has been the biggest change in your time in the 20 years you've been with SARM? And do you see the organization continuously growing under your leadership?
The biggest change. Now, that is a great question. I mean, we've had lots of big issues over the years, like education, property tax. We've talked a lot, seen a lot of changes in agriculture. I think, SARM is really involved in agriculture and always has been. I really start to think that landscape in agriculture is changing. So I do think that a lot of the issues that SARM sees change, it's to do with agriculture and the way that farms are changing. I mean, they're not the small family farms they once were. They're becoming a lot bigger. A lot of the services they need from rural municipalities have changed. They need to have, really strong and primary weight roads, basically. They can't run on secondary anymore because their trucks are huge. So I mean, that's been a big change for SARM. And so I really think our members too, we've introduced programs to help them build better roads, right? We've been, working with government to offer them some funding to do things like that. I really think that's the biggest change. And then looking back at some of the issues that are still the same, I mean, I think we had a resolution on daylight savings time a long time ago when I was at SARM, and I think it come up again recently. And even looking at snowplow clubs, right? And making sure, if it's really snowy, you can have your people that have plows go out and plow the roads and they don't incur liability. So those kinds of things are still the same. So it's very interesting how some of it just is on repeat. And yet I see the landscape in rural Saskatchewan changing because agriculture is changing.
The last year for SARM has been somewhat of a big changeover. A new acting president, soon to be president, new executive director. Was 2024 a year of flux for the organization? And as we're about to be gathering in Saskatoon for the annual convention, your first annual convention, how do you tell members that last year was a good year of change, but this year is the year that we get back to work and the real work begins, the advocacy work for your members? What's your message to members who might be looking and saying, what's been going on? Because it seems like there's been a high turnover at the top levels at SARM.
Oh, you know what my answer to that is? Boy, were we lucky to have the leaders that we had that came before us. So both Bill Huber and I have talked long and hard about that topic. And I mean, to have Ray Orb exit, Jay Meyer exit when they did, we didn't just do that overnight. Jay and I had a transition that was almost, I don't even know, 8 months long, probably longer than that by the time I knew I was taking on this role. And then Bill, I mean, really, and Ray stepped up and they did a lot of things together as Bill looked to take over and Ray was exiting. So we had some really good advice. We had some really good leadership that led us to this spot. So I like to reassure people that, yeah, it's changed, but at the same time, we had a lot of mentoring and a lot of coaching and a lot of discussions before that actual transition happened. And yes, there's going to be change. I mean, every leader puts their spin on things, right? But at the same
So
time,
can I ask a simple question?
yeah.
What's the difference between you and Jay Meyer then? So what
Oh,
is the difference of leadership style that you're going to be bringing to the organization that wasn't there in Jay Meyer? Not saying that Jay Meyer didn't do a great job. He did a fantastic job. He left big shoes to fill. How does the Laurel Feltin leadership, executive director leadership, fill the Jay Meyer void? And how does it
oh,
better it?
that is a great question. So Jay was a very bold leader. He liked to change. He just embodied it, right? And so I've been at SARM, like I said, 20 years, and I've learned to embody change. I've seen all of the great things that it can do. I just think I approach change a little differently. I'm the type of person that always wants to know how we're going to get there, not just necessarily that we're going to get there. So I think I'm going to guide a team of staff and board where we're good, we're really organized, and we really have a plan. I'm going to work with the board here coming up in April to have a little bit of a strategic priority session and, bring in a consultant and talk about what our plan is for the next 5 years. Just things like that. And I really hope that that helps us get on the same page and, leads us all in the same direction. So our staff, our board, and our members are all pulling in the same direction. Jay did that too, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just my time to sit with the board and have that conversation. And we get to talk about what we want to do together. And I just think that's inspiring. And I know that our new crop of board members too. So SARM's had a lot of change in our board too, not just at the top. We have a lot of new board members and they bring some new energy too, which is really encouraging. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off because I think it's the most probably the one side of the story that needs to be talked about. You are the very first woman to hold the role of executive director in SARM's over 100-year history. What does that mean for you to break that glass ceiling, to be the first woman in this position, and hopefully, and I say this with respect, and hopefully you're 10 years long, but not the last?
Oh, I hope not. You know what? I'm a firm believer and you've got to hire the right person for the job. And I've always been a firm believer in that. And I remind my children every day that, look, sometimes, yeah, you might not be the right fit, but you know what? If you're the right fit, then you got to step up and you got to do all the things. So yes, I'm the first woman in this role. And you know what? I don't think it should ever be a question of that. You should always hire the best person for the job. And I am hopeful that this sets an example. I mean, SARM is a very old organization. Like you said, we're approaching, we're over 100 years old. I think it's pretty cool. I will use the word cool that someday I might be in a history book saying Laurel Feltin was the first female executive director at SARM. And I hope there's other names that follow that are, just as worthy of this position. Because like I said, I want it to be a mix of men and women. I don't want it to be about that. I want it to be about who's the best fit for the role. So that's what I'll say.
But you're inspiring a new generation of young leaders, young women leaders in rural Saskatchewan who now look at you and say, oh, Laurel, like you said, your daughter could be an
Yeah.
executive director. Young women out there who might be thinking about putting their name on the ballot to become their reeve of their community, their counselor of their community. You're setting an example. Is it kind of tedious that you might be looked at and put on a pedestal? And if you fail, or and I don't hope you fail, but if you fall, that people might go, oh, okay, it's just another woman falling, and
Yeah.
that's where we need to go back to a man.
I hear you. And you know what? Just so you know, I'm someone that takes mistakes seriously. Like, I don't mean that I lose sleep over them. I do. And my goal, any mistake that you make, you got to learn from it. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I'm someone that's surrounded myself. Jay taught me this. You definitely want to surround yourself with great people, right? I don't know everything. I could never pretend to. So, I mean, I've got folks around here that know things about communications. I've got folks around here that know things about insurance programs and legal and all of those things, and a board that is so knowledgeable and members that are so knowledgeable. So, I really do think I'm setting myself up for success because I'm not doing it on my own. And I would never pretend to do that ever. I give credit to all of those people that helped me get here and that will help me through my tenure in this role.
From what I understand, one of the biggest priorities that you have in your new role is relationship building. Can you elaborate how you plan to engage with rural municipal leaders? Because I've driven Saskatchewan. I know there's a lot of rural municipalities across your province. How do
Mhm.
you plan to engage with all members so that they feel like they have a voice in the new leadership of SARM?
For me, it's mostly about walking around and shaking hands. So even at our SARM convention, I know you said we got 296 of them. The rural municipal landscape is vast. But for me as the executive director, I want to use the times that we're together to go up and say hi and find out what really matters at home. Because you know what, sometimes we get caught up in media and you think all of these issues are really what's important to people. But then you talk to them and it's like, well, you know what? No, really, I don't even know. I can't think. Well, whatever. It could be something very simple, right? So I just really want to find that stuff out. And I really want to engage our board more. So the thing is, when I started at SARM many years ago, we used to have a board that used to visit the RM council meetings, like, I don't know, they would do 10 to 12 a year type thing and actually be invited as a delegation, go in and sit there and hear what the RMs are dealing with. We do a little bit of that. I'd like to do more of that, right? And get those board members out there talking to the people at council, right? Here's the thing, Chris, we have a lot of change on council now, right? I mean, there was a time when I was at SARM, the board didn't change. And I saw the very same faces at convention, but we're seeing more change and more turnover. So we need to get in front of those people more often. And I really do think having our board go out and meet with their actual members, the ones that are in their divisions, would be so impactful. And like I said, we've been doing it, but I think we could step it up a bit.
Now, you've been in this position since December of 2024. So this is not you just got appointed yesterday. I'm
Yeah.
assuming those conversations, that outreach has already started.
Yes.
What have you been hearing from your members? What are they saying about what SARM can help them with today? Because you're going to be gathering in Saskatoon in March, a few days from when this airs, and you're going to hear from a large portion, a large majority of your members. But in your initial first day conversations, what are you hearing?
Well, that's a very good question, and this is an issue I'm happy to share. So, I've had a couple board members go out. I've heard this myself. Basically, what happens is the way the Municipalities Act is written. If there's a small village out there that maybe is consists of, I don't know, 8 to 11 houses, who even knows, very tiny, and basically can't function anymore. It doesn't have a functional council. They don't have anyone to run it anymore, like an administrator that's functioning. They're given a few warnings, but at the end of the day, if they can't function anymore, the RM is required in the legislation to take that village over. Okay, so it just becomes part of the RM. This is a challenge for RMs because it's happening more often. There's more and more of these out there, these villages, that just can't function anymore. We don't have as many people stepping up to run for council. We don't have as many people stepping up, that are qualified to manage a town, like a little tiny village. And the people are moving out. So we end up with these situations where we have RMs that are taking over water and sewer, and trying to make sure that these people have what they need. And the legislation does allow, for them to put on things like special service areas so they can collect some funding to make, the special accommodations these folks might need. But at the end of the day, it's happening more often. It's a big cost, right? And we want to do it well as rural municipalities. And we're just starting to question, is this the best way? So is there perhaps a time for a change in legislation where maybe a bigger town could take over a village if they're close by? They would already have the expertise that's required for water and sewer. Again, not saying it's going to work in all instances, but why does it always have to be the same? So that's a very interesting thing, and we're hearing it more and more.
When you talk about collaboration and outreach to your members, are you also talking about outreach to SUMA as well, your sister
Oh,
organization of the Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities? Because you mentioned urban municipalities, I've got to ask the follow-up question. If I didn't, I would be doing my job, or I'd probably hear from the SUMA people. Why didn't you follow up with that? So are you planning to sit down, or have you already sat down with the executive director or CEO of SUMA?
so yes, Bill Huber and myself met their president and executive director early in the new year to just have a little coffee chat. And so we're new, right? I mean, Randy Golden, their president, and Jean-Marc Nadeau, their executive director, they aren't new, but they're new to us in these roles. So
Yeah.
we had a really good conversation just about, in general, things that we want to do together. We're actually exploring our first municipal forum together. So what we do is SARM and SUMA have traditionally asked the Minister of Government Relations to sit down with us together in the same room, and we talk about issues that are of common interest. So this is not a new conversation. So Jay Meyer and Ray Orb had this before Bill and I did with SUMA, the fact that, this is happening and how do we work together to make this better, right? And make it better for folks. So I really hope that municipal forum will lend to that. We're actually, as a board, we're going to have some government relations folks come in and present on that piece of the legislation so we have a full understanding on it before we talk to SUMA. So we're working towards it. And I think our municipal forum is going to be in April. So that gives us a little bit of time to, really, Bill and I are new and we're trying to wrap our heads, even the new board, trying to wrap their heads around what really could work here. So we're taking steps and had those initial conversations. So
You mentioned the province, so let's play in that provincial sandbox for a second, if you don't
sure.
mind.
Yeah.
How do you plan to work with this provincial government? Because you're coming in at a time when they're newly elected. They have a government that is majority made up of rural members. There's a few urban Saskatoon and Regina, Saskatoon seats that they have, but they're mostly rural. How do you plan to work with the incoming Saskatchewan, the current Saskatchewan Party government, as the executive director to ensure that SARM's voice is heard and SARM's is at the table when these discussions are happening?
A very good question. So SARM has always been an advocate of having one-on-one meetings with these folks. So in December, January, Bill Huber, myself, and our acting vice president, Darren Steinley, had quite a few meetings with these new ministers. So we went out and met with the Minister of Environment. We went out and met with the new Minister of Government Relations. We have meetings coming up with the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Highways. Actually, we already met with Agriculture, I forgot, but Highways is coming up. So what we try to do is target our big issues, like those ministers that are in charge of those big issues, and we sit down and we talk to them. One of the first questions we ask them is, can we have quarterly meetings with you? So not just a one and done, like we want to have a schedule. And in my experience from last year, I mean, they don't always happen. You might end up with 3 out of the 4, but if you can set the stage and have that plan going in, that makes a big difference. So our plan is to, you know what, just have those and talk to them, get in depth on some of these issues, that really matter to SARM. And I think that's really important. The other thing we did is sat down with the NDP and their Carla Beck and her team. Again, that was in December, I think end of December. Very similar meeting, right? We said, you know what, we need to know and stay in touch, and can we have regular meetings with you? So trying to make sure that we have those doors open, and a plan to meet again. That's kind of how we approach it.
Must be reassuring that the current Minister of Government Relations is a former SARM member himself, the former Reeve of the RM of Prince Albert, if I'm not mistaken. Have you had
Yes.
a chance to sit down with him since you've been appointed into this new role? And what was that initial conversation like? And are you looking forward to having him plus the Premier at this year's convention?
Oh, definitely. So we did sit down with him in December. It was a great meeting. He's brand new too. So again, it was very much, we approached that very first one. I think we had a half an hour. It was very much a meet and greet, right? We wanted to find out about him. We introduced ourselves. We talked a little bit about that piece of legislation I was talking about, Municipalities Act. And tried to keep it kind of light for that first one. But like I said, the first question was, can we have quarterly meetings? So I'm happy to report that on March 3rd, we're having a follow-up with him, and we'll get more in depth on some of these issues. So very, very good first meeting, and it's led to a second one. So that's great. I'm very excited to have them join our convention. Our feedback from convention, the Bear Pit always gets the biggest applause. People love the Bear Pit. They love the opportunity to hear the Premier speak. They love the opportunity to get up and ask them questions. So I'll tell you this, it's always well received by our members. And then the new minister, I mean, he's going to address our crowd for the very first time, and he has that experience of being one of those people in the crowd. So I imagine he's going to bring, kind of a personal touch to that, which I'm looking forward to hearing him.
I am looking forward to it as well. I want to turn because you have now almost passed the first 100 days in your new position as SARM Executive Director since when you were appointed to when we're recording this. Um, but the work is going to get probably harder because you have a lot more challenges that lay ahead. What initiatives or programs are you planning to introduce at SARM to expand what you're already doing? Or are you waiting to, as we talked about earlier, waiting to hear from the members about what they want to see potential around initiatives or programs that SARM could be helping them with? Is it a cart before the horse, or is the horse before the cart?
Well, thanks to Ray and Jay, I don't have to put either of those first. So the nice thing is we've done needs assessment surveys with our members 2 times actually. Trying to remember when the first one was. Might have been 2020. I could be wrong on this, but we just did another one right before Jay and Ray left. And so we got input from both our ARM administrator side and our elected saying what things they need from SARM. And so one of the things we heard loud and clear was that they want to learn more from SARM. They want SARM to kind of provide them a little bit of education and make it easy. So I can tell you, we are working on a learning management system, and it's actually being piloted with a few RMs right now. So this is brand new for SARM, and because we're in the pilot stage, we're not announcing it yet to all RMs, but let's put it this way. I think I heard there's going to be 5 or 6 that are trying it out this week. And I got to sit through one of the modules, and it's a nice little 10-minute, online training that an ARM administrator could sit down with council and do. And it's things like, did you know that what a conflict of interest is? Did you know, that the Municipalities Act exists and this is what it says? So they're very simple, and it's funny. Sometimes you think, oh, is it too simple? But you know what? We have a lot of new folks coming on council, and they don't know any of this. So I think it's perfect, and I'm excited to hear the feedback that our members give on that. Really excited, actually. And then one other thing I'll mention, one of the other things that we heard through resolution and that needs assessment was that RMs are dealing with human resource challenges, and they don't know where to go for support. So RMs, I mean, unless they're unionized, they basically abide by Sask labor's laws, just like SARM does as an employer. And they often need guidance when it comes to, something going wrong with a staff member. And so SARM actually, just a few weeks ago, announced a pilot. And so we're piloting this in Division 2 and Division 5, where we're offering HR services just on a contract basis at a lower rate, like the same as we do for our legal and planning, and seeing if RMs are going to pick this up, right? Do they need it? And what kind of questions are they asking? Are there things that we can put out in a template that would help them? Do we need to continue this service and expand it to all divisions? So we're in a testing phase, and that's why I feel fortunate. I was lucky enough to have Jay and Ray pave that path. So now I just have to work with the staff here to figure out how best to deliver it. So
I want to turn to the convention because it's on the top of a lot of people's minds right now, especially in the RMs, because they're about to pick up their bags and head off to Saskatoon to talk about the bear pit, meet with ministers, meet with yourself for the very first time. And you talk about how there was a big changeover in the last municipal election. So this is going to be the first time that many councillors, reeves, might be attending a convention of this size for SARM. What's your hope that people take away from this year's convention? And what's your hope as the new executive director that you take away from this convention outside of going up and meeting people and shaking their hands? What's that one thing that you're hoping to take away? And what do you hope the attendees take away?
uh, I always hope they take away a positive piece. Sometimes you can get down in the dumps when you're debating resolutions and that sort of thing. And when you're talking about issues like rural healthcare and you're talking about public safety, and we've got things going on in the province with criminal activity, and I mean there's news stories every day about these things. But I'm really hopeful. We have a couple panels and things going on in the main stage where I'm hoping people take a piece of positive away. I used to help run convention here, and I really do think we've changed the agenda up a lot in trying to make it more positive, because rural Saskatchewan is a great story, great successes, and I really hope that people network, talk to one another, even just to find out you're not alone, right? Sometimes dealing with an HR issue with a staff person is no fun. Doesn't matter if it's at SARM or in an RM office, but if you can find out, hey, I'm not the only one dealing with this stuff. And I really think that's the biggest part about our convention is RMs get to talk to each other, right? And they get to realize they're not alone and they share ideas. I think that's one of the best things about it.
What about yourself?
Oh, I learned so much at convention.
Because
So
you jokingly said you used to be part of doing the conventions. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure you're still part of doing the conventions, if I'm
I
not
am.
mistaken.
But I'm hoping I'm not going to hear about the meals were cold and it was cold in this corner of the convention hall. Like I'm hoping that it gets bigger than that. Because when I was in charge of convention, Amy, our convention coordinator, that's what we would hear, right? We would get that real, low level feedback. So I'm hoping, yes, I get more about like this is the issues that matter to my RM, and is SARM doing anything on this? Tell me more about that HR pilot. Like, how's it going? Like, that kind of those kinds of conversations. So yes, it'll be different for me. It's a different hat and a different level of feedback, I hope.
Do you want the individual opinions of the RMs? Because at these conventions, there's usually consensus that comes away because there's, like you said, resolutions that are debated. They're talked about at length about what the SARM should be advocating for. But you mentioned you're hoping to listen. Are you hoping to hear the very what's going on in the RM of Gull Lake? What's going on in the RM of grass, yeah, yellow grass? Like, are
Yeah,
you hoping to hear from the individual RM members to say, what exactly is your biggest issue? Because
yeah.
sometimes that sometimes that can get lost in these larger conventions, can it? Can't it?
Oh, very much so. I mean, we're over 2,000 people at our annual convention. A lot of folks don't even feel comfortable getting up to a microphone in that venue, right? I mean, it's a big, big thing to get up there. So that's why I think, and this is Jay's advice. This isn't me coming up with this on my own. He would walk around convention. He's like, Laurel, you got to do that. Like, you got to go shake hands and talk to those individuals. And yes, I hear what you're saying. I mean, SARM, we probably put our most effort into those issues that impact the bulk of our members. Sometimes you don't even know if something's an issue until you talk to someone, right? And then maybe if you hear from more than one or two, it becomes something bigger, right? And something SARM can look into. So I'm excited to do that. And on Jay's advice, I'm definitely going to take that. And I'm going to take it to heart and just see what the arm of Gull Lake's dealing with, specifically. So
I really feel bad for picking out the arm of Gull Lake. It's just I had that on the top of my head for some reason this morning. That's the only arm that I could think of out of the 200 that you have. Um,
yeah.
Rural Saskatchewan plays a very critical role in the provincial's economy.
Oh,
Agriculture, you talked about the resource sector. Um, this is going to be talked about a lot at this upcoming convention because what's happening south of the border. Now, we are recording this at the end of February prior to any announcement from Donald Trump about potential tariffs. Now, I had the pleasure to chat with your acting president, Bill Huber, on the show about these tariffs and how it could impact. I can imagine this is going to dominate this convention about these potential tariffs, right?
oh yes. I definitely think it'll be Brenton Center, and our bear pit. I mean, we'll hear
Are
questions
you
on all.
comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with whatever our members need to get off their chests. Yes, I 100% am. And you know what? At the same time, like SARM, we've been following that issue so closely. We're sitting around tables with the Ministry of Agriculture and also Warren Kading, who's, all over trying to make inroads. And you know what? I think it's scary, yes, because it's unknown. But I do think our province has done a good job at making inroads at looking at new markets. And I really think, I mean, they're singing from a page of, we all need to speak from the same page. We can't let them divide us. And we got to figure out how to do interprovincial trade better. And we got to figure out how to find new markets so that we're not facing this in future years, right? So I like the conversation. And I really think the potential is there. It's just keeping everyone on the same page, not letting Trump scare everybody and divide us, That's the challenge.
I am cautious of time, and I have one last question, and it's
Sure.
a big question because it might span a few other questions if you say something that I need to clarify. We've talked a lot about your new role, what this convention means, and what you're planning to do on your listening to members. What's the one thing that we haven't talked about that you hope members understand about your new role, your new position, how you are going to lead SARM into 2025, 2026, and beyond?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I want people to know that they can always call me. I mean, I'm someone that wants to listen. I've always been that person, right? I'm someone that likes to listen to whatever's going on. And I mean, I can't promise to fix everything. I would never do that either because I know that's not possible in all situations. But I definitely want members to know that, give me a call. And my long-term vision for SARM, I actually got a chance to talk to the staff about this before I took this role. I sat down with everybody and the board. I've told this too. I'd like SARM to be that first call someday. And so when I say that, I want members to be able to just think, oh, I don't know the answer to this. I'm just going to call SARM and they'll point me in the right direction. So when I say that, I don't mean that SARM is going to pick up every program and every service. I think we've got to look for partnerships, right? So yes, we're looking at adding HR. We're looking at a learning management system. And those are sandboxes I think SARM belongs in. But what if we need to partner with somebody else on delivering a different service? There's lots of wonderful stakeholder groups and associations out there that are experts in their field. And I just really would like to be able to be that place where they are on phones, they're having an issue and they want to talk about something that SARM doesn't do, but we can point them in the right direction because we've got a partner or we know somebody that does that. So for me, that's what I would like members to know is that's my goal, probably in the next 5 years. Um, my own personal goal. Keeping that in mind, I mean, this isn't necessarily coming from the board or the staff. This is what I'm thinking going in. So
You have an amazing team at SARM, whether it be from you all the way down to the communications, to policy, to your executive assistants, the receptionist when you walk through that front door. This is a team sport called Municipal Organizations, and you are now the lead. The new president is going to be elected or acclaimed at this year's convention. Are you optimistic about SARM's future heading into the next 100 years of the organization?
without a doubt, I'm optimistic. SARM has always been not afraid to change as an organization and change when our members need us to. So I know that we have a board and we have a staff, we have a membership, that embraces that. And I really do think that the innovation we've shown over the years, I can't even believe since I started at Term 20 years ago, all of the innovative stuff we're doing. I mean, all of a sudden we're using webinars and we're, doing online member registration for convention. And there was a time where we did everything with a pen and paper. And so the fact that we have a board and a staff that supports innovation, I have no doubt that we're going to continue down roads. Yes, probably we've never traveled before, but we're going to do it under my leadership. We're going to think about it. We're going to have a plan, and then we're going to execute. Might do a few more pilots just to test the waters, but that's good.
Well, Laurel, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about your new position, the upcoming convention, and the future of SARM. I am looking forward to meeting you in person at this year's convention and looking forward to hearing from your members. And hopefully, for any members who are listening, if you see me in the convention halls, stop because I probably will want to ask you a few questions on the record. So, Laurel, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great opportunity.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights at what's going on in SARM. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms or your favorite streaming platforms like YouTube, and follow us on social media. For even more content and to learn more about the stories and people we feature on this show, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time on Municipal Affairs. Till then, everyone.